I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are gathered today. From where we're broadcasting, those are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Sincerest thanks to all of you for attending tonight. Normally, we'd have a big room for all of you to intermingle and eat and drink lots of alcohol. By this time of the year, our events, even our committee meetings, would have been full of social engagement, the opportunity to make new friends, and to get to know our finalists in person. But the universe has seen otherwise, and we've done our best to continue delivering value to our members and to the broader community within the restrictions resulting from COVID-19. As a major part of that, we've aspired to bring you a meaty yet engaging webinar this evening. Our thanks to our partners, Bendigo Elwood Community Bank and Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, for enabling us to enter this digital galaxy with gusto. When Gillian Hunn and Patricia Burke founded the Melbourne Women's Fund 6 years ago, they were aware that the needs of vulnerable women and families in Melbourne required focused attention. With COVID-19, the needs of these individuals and the bold organizations that support them have become even more acute. Empowering these organizations and their ultimate beneficiaries is a key reason why we're gathered here this evening. Tonight, you'll hear our 6 outstanding finalists, 3 for our $80,000 signature grant and 3 for our $35,000 nurturing grant, each deliver a 7-minute presentation about their organization and the program for which they are seeking funding. Given the technical challenges of this being a webinar, the presentations have been recorded. Given the extra challenges imposed by lockdown, some of these organizations had to record themselves rather than use the professional services we had for the job. So please keep the reality of these challenges in mind when you vote. Some quick housekeeping would be about telling you where the food is and where the bar is and where the bathrooms are. But I have no idea where you keep your alcohol, and I don't know where your bathrooms are, but presumably you do. No, these days, housekeeping is all about tech stuff. So here we go. This event is being recorded and your microphone will be muted throughout. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button and a chat button, which is actually the Say Something Nice area. You can ask questions throughout the presentations, as well as during the 3-minute Q&A section that follows each presentation. Otherwise, the chat function, where, as I said, it says Say Something Nice, will be on except for the 5-minute break between the nurturing and signature grant presentations and the 10-minute break for voting. Please refer to the events program that you received this morning if you're interested in more details about the evening. Regarding voting, members, you should all have access to the voting form email you received at 9 a.m. this past Monday. Please vote whenever you feel like it, but I suggest waiting until our 10-minute voting section after all the presentations are completed. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Professor Christy Muir. Christy has an extraordinary biography that I can hardly do justice to. She is the CEO of the Center for Social Impact and a professor of social policy in the business school at UNSW Sydney, as well as being the chair or director of several prominent social service organizations, such as chair of Allen and Gilgrave Philanthropy Australasia and a non-executive director of the Australian Research Alliance for Children and Youth. She's worked for almost 3 decades with many government, not-for-profit, corporate, academic, and philanthropic organizations, undertaking over 80 projects that have attracted almost $28.5 million in funding. Her research spans housing, education, employment, social participation, disability, mental health, financial resilience, and well-being. Recently, she has spoken extensively about the value of the not-for-profit sector, the sector we seek to strengthen. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Christy Muir.
Good evening. Great to be with you this evening. Let me first acknowledge the Dharawal people whose country that I'm based on and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging here and wherever you might be based around the country. I also want to acknowledge the incredible strengths, the languages, the dreamings, the art, the culture of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and also to acknowledge the shameful history that we have: dispossession, the massacres, the stolen children, and as the Uluru Statement put it, the torment of their powerlessness. I wish that we were all in a room somewhere together celebrating this great awards evening, but it's probably best that we're not, given what's going on in the state and around the country and around the globe. This crisis that we are in, this global health, economic and social dislocation, is one that is such that we have not seen in generations. Now more than ever, I think, in our living history, we are in a space where the importance of our charities is coming to the fore. I see our charities as the strong threads in our social fabric. They stitch together the patchwork quilt that is our lives. They're the binds that connect us. They hold individuals and families and friends and communities and societies together. They keep those ties strong in good times and they stitch us back together when they come unstuck. They support our most vulnerable, but they do so much more. Sometimes we recognise this and other times we take it for granted. Our charities care for our kids in our playgroups, in our daycare, in our preschools. They care for our ageing parents, our grandparents, our family members. They enable independence and inclusion for people with disabilities. They support and improve the mental health of our teenagers. They educate us. They improve our health and they cure our diseases. They research to solve our most pressing problems and come up with new innovations. They rescue our puppies and cure our injured wildlife. They organise our weekend sports, the ones that we play in and the ones that we watch. They run our museums and our cultural institutions. They're our places for prayer and our points of social connection. The value of our charities to our social fabric and on our quality of life is immeasurable. They're also critical to our economic productivity. The ACNC latest report found that our registered charities employ 1 in 10 of us across this country. They account for 8% of our GDP and they engage over 3.7 million volunteers across this country. In November 2017, Deloitte Economics did a piece of work that valued the economic contribution of the charity sector at $129 billion. And they estimated that the volunteer hours that were contributed by volunteers at 328 million unpaid hours were worth the equivalent of around $12.8 billion in wages. Despite this value, this social and economic value that our charities provide, as the economy becomes more fragile and their demand for goods and services go up, they are also facing more fragility as their revenue decreases. Some will struggle to survive irrespective of this value to society. The cracks, some seismic in nature, have started to appear. We've seen cancellation of services and events due to social distancing measures, limited capacity to run activities, loss of volunteers, decreases of donations and other income shocks have left some charities unable to pay some staff or deliver on their purpose. This isn't just about COVID. Prior to COVID-19, charities were already struggling. They were operating on thin margins while facing increasing demands. And in any for-profit business, an increase in demand would mean more revenue and actually a better bottom line usually. For our registered charities, while the increase in revenue in 2018 went up by 6.4%, their expenses grew by 8.5%. The average net income ratio, that's the size or the difference between the organisation's surplus or deficit as a percentage of their total income, was only 6.3%, much lower than 2017 and the lowest that we've seen over the last 4 years. This decreasing net income ratio shows that charities were already close to the bone before COVID, and they were already reporting increased demands on their services. Charities had limited discretionary funding, limited ability to invest in capacity building and infrastructure, limited ability to access new capital to smooth out impacts of shock, all sorts of stresses prior to COVID-19. But during the crisis, we have seen these things exacerbate. We have seen charities starting to see drops in revenue and drops in revenue that is tied and untied, which is particularly concerning because we know that flexible funding is what gives charities the capacity to meet needs and respond to crisis. The Centre for Social Impact's recent report, in partnership with the Social Ventures Australia, we modelled that if the revenue for charities with employees, paid employees, dropped by 20%, we looked at what would happen to those charities over the next year. What we found was alarming. Almost 9 in 10 charities would be making an immediate operating loss. Over 1 in 6 would be at risk of closing their doors within 6 months because their reserves would run out. And what we also modelled was that there was a risk of more than 200,000 jobs being lost in the sector. On top of what those job losses might mean in terms of the functioning of charities and the support that they provide for society, in addition to that, many of these employees are women. They're employees on low to moderate incomes, and they're usually pushing money straight back into the economy as a result. So losing these jobs has implications not just for our charity sector, not just for the implication of what that means for society, but also on gender inequality and the economy overall. We know that JobKeeper has been a really useful tool to keep charities operating and to enable them to continue to employ staff. But the October cliff is looming. In October, we could see that grim reality of over 200,000 jobs being lost. There are serious implications, not just the ones that I've outlined, but also the cost of not doing business. And we know the cost of not doing business, the cost of social dislocation are really high. All we need to look is the cost of what happens when we don't intervene early or early enough. Let me just give you 3 examples. Australia spends $15.2 billion each year because our kids and our children and our young people experience serious issues that require crisis interventions. The average person who's homeless costs the government over $25,000 a year. And we know that poor educational performance and educational inequity directly affects our long-term GDP and the economy's growth. So before COVID, we already saw charities struggling to meet needs across communities. During COVID, we have seen them become under increasing financial pressure, while at the same time the demand for their services has increased. Without further support, we know that charities are going to be in trouble. They need our support now and into the future. What can we do about it? Our report has called for 6 recommendations. We're calling on the government to create a ramp, not a cliff, for job seeker, and allowing charities to continue to ramp off JobKeeper to enable them to keep employing staff. We're calling for the creation of a charities transformation fund to help charities transition to whatever the new normal might look like. We're calling for not just governments, but also philanthropists and other funders to actually pay what it takes. Pay charities what it costs to deliver services effectively, and we know there has been underfunding for some time. We're calling for governments to retain job seeker at the higher level to enable to keep people out of poverty and to make sure that we mitigate the demand that we might see on charities should that payment go back to keeping people below the poverty line. We're calling on making fundraising and philanthropy simpler. And importantly, we need more research. We don't have all the answers. We need to better understand the capability of the for-purpose sector to meet its purpose and deliver on that purpose, and to make sure that we can all build back better into the future. We need our charities to be partners in COVID recovery, not COVID casualties. The cost of social dislocation is too high. The value of our charities in terms of the threads of social fabric that they hold together and the benefit they bring to all of us is immense. I congratulate the Melbourne Women's Donor Fund for the great work that you've been doing over a number of years, and appeal to you to give what you can, where you can, in your time and or your money, to untie funding wherever you can to enable charities to do what they do best. I wish the charities who are up for funding all the best in what's going to be announced and awarded, and congratulate all of you for continuing to make our society much stronger. Have a fabulous evening. Good luck. Keep your humanities and your values close, and take care.
Our thanks to Professor Muir. How fortunate we are to have her expertise and knowledge entering into our finalist presentations, particularly given the fact that tonight really is about empowering not-for-profits. Now, it's time to begin our presentations. We're starting with our 3 finalists for our $35,000 nurturing grant. First up is Family Access Network, otherwise known as FAN. Presenting for FAN is youth support worker Madison Sill.
Family Access Network is a youth homelessness service located in Melbourne's east. We support young people aged between 15 and 25 years who are experiencing homelessness or are at risk of homelessness. We also run multiple groups, including a young mums group, an LGBTIQ social group, and an LGBTIQ family violence group. In our most recent snapshot of data, we found that 100% of our clients had experienced family violence. That's why we believe our project, Building Better Futures, is critical to supporting young people to create a sustainable future. Our project will support young mothers who have experienced or are experiencing homelessness and family violence. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare have reported that young pregnant women are at most risk of experiencing family violence. The AHW also reported that in 2016 to 2017, 72,000 women and 34,000 children sought the support of homelessness services due to experiencing family violence. We want to support these young women and help them build their capacity so that they can support themselves and their children. This program won't only support the young women, it will also support their children. The young children are likely to have experienced the traumas of being homeless, as well as possibly witnessing the family violence perpetrated towards their mother. This group will provide them the safe space to continue forming healthy relationships with their mothers, as well as building friendships with the other accompanying children. Building Better Futures is a group-based project that will empower young women to build on their capacity to support themselves and to provide information around topics such as child development, healthy relationships, how to create a budget, and creating resumes. It can be difficult for people to gain accurate and tangible information about finances, education, and employment, as well as it being delivered in a supportive way and tailored to their needs. Building Better Futures plans to be just that. The young women that we are targeting can be some of the most isolated. They may have limited family supports, limited social supports, and may not have the knowledge or resources to access the appropriate services. The social interaction element allows the group of young women to discuss shared experiences and provide support and advice in a supportive place. The group facilitator will also be able to provide one-on-one support and make the appropriate referrals as necessary. This program has a unique capability of being able to tailor the program for the presenting needs of each group. We plan on running the group 4 times in a year in 10-week blocks. We will be able to be flexible on what topics are discussed and where the focus needs to be. We realise that there are many organisations that support homeless young people young parents, and women experiencing family violence. However, we see these issues as intersectional, and our project seeks to address them as such. We know that family violence is a growing issue in our society. One woman is killed every 9 days at the hands of her partner. Family violence is the single biggest cause of homelessness in Victoria. We want to run this group to enhance the skills of young women in the community who are experiencing family violence and homelessness. We want to support young people to break the cycle and stigma of being a young mum, homeless, and a victim survivor of family violence. The funding will go into hiring a specialist family violence worker, creating resources, and bringing in facilitators to educate the young women on various topics. The resources we anticipate creating includes workbooks and practical activities that the young women can take with them to continue building on their skills. It will include a budgeting template, resume building, and information about creating a leaving plan. We see this group as being a pilot program for future responses to family violence and homelessness. Our hope is that after evaluating our program, we can seek funding from government agencies such as DHHS and be able to roll out the program to more young people. The cost of not running this program is far-reaching. Research shows that the effects of family violence and homelessness include increased mental health concerns, increased emotional and physical trauma, more pressure on already under-resourced family violence services, and an ongoing lack of safety for the mother and her child. 4 years ago, family violence was estimated to have cost Victoria $5.3 billion, and sadly this will only increase. We have a client who accessed our service late last year who became homeless due to leaving a family violence perpetrator. She was 19 and left only with a bag of clothes and her 1-year-old son. The young woman left school at 16 and fell pregnant at 17. She was struggling to find employment as she hadn't worked before, and she left school halfway through year 10. She had limited social supports as most of her friends fell away after she gave birth and she was no longer in contact with her family. We were able to support the young woman with transitional housing to help her to create a resume and find her casual employment whilst her child was in daycare. We also provided a lot of information about child development and healthy attachment so that she could provide the best care to her son. This woman has come a long way and has modelled the impact that the group could have. By offering this group to a larger cohort of people, we will be able to see real change and positive outcomes for the women participating. Ultimately, this group can save a life. If we can equip the young women with the skills and knowledge to support themselves and stay safe, then we can ensure that they do not become another statistic.
Hi, Madison. Are you there? We have a question for you. Will the program run if funding is not received?
Unfortunately, we won't be able to run the program if the funding isn't received. It's not something we will be able to afford at this stage. But yeah, we are hoping to in the future gain the funding to run the program, but we won't be able to run it without this.
Okay. Do we have any other questions that are coming in at all? No? Well, thanks very much, Madison. Good luck. And
Thank you.
we will now present the Housing for Aged Action Group.
Hi, my name's Fiona York. I'm the Executive Officer of Housing for the Aged Action Group. We are a community organisation that's been advocating for housing justice for older people since the mid-80s. We were started by a group of older women and we have now grown to having 490 members. We run a specialist older person's housing service which is called Home at Last, and we house on average around 120 people a year in long-term and affordable housing. We also have a retirement housing service that provides advocacy and advice to residents of retirement housing. We're not a crisis service and most of our clients aren't rough sleepers. The majority of people who come to us have never accessed services before. They don't necessarily have overly complex needs. And around 60% of our clients are older women in their late 50s and early 60s, struggling in private rental, many who have worked all their lives in low-paid jobs, who suddenly find themselves unable to make the rent, relying on friends and family for a place to sleep. Older people are the fastest growing group facing homelessness, increasing at a faster rate than any other group. Over the last 10 years, while youth homelessness has been decreasing, rates of homelessness amongst older people have been increasing, and this isn't just due to the ageing population. As you're no doubt aware, this is particularly an issue for older women. Older women have had the biggest percentage increase in homelessness over the last 5 years, including a big jump in the number of older women aged 75 plus who are sleeping in their cars. And we know that this is just the tip of the iceberg because most older women have not previously interacted with the service system, and they adopt a range of coping mechanisms like cutting down on food and electricity or medication, and so going to a homelessness service is the last resort. As well as people who are counted as homeless, there are increasing numbers of older people who are at risk. Although the stereotype is that baby boomers all own their own home, that's just not the case anymore. More and more people are renting than ever before, and there's 182,000 people aged 65 plus renting in Victoria right now. And we know that renting is expensive and insecure. We know that in Victoria there are 12,000 lone single women households with at least one person over 65 in housing stress. We'll soon be releasing a report by the University of Adelaide that looks more closely at women who are at risk of homelessness in Australia, and it estimates that there are 130,000 women aged 45 plus and older who are at risk of homelessness in Victoria right now. I'd quickly like to tell you a story about one of our clients who came to us, and this is a very typical thing, the sort of thing that we see at HAG all the time. So Anne is in her late 50s. She had a professional career most of her working life. However, she was made redundant at the age of 59 and she ended up on Newstart. She thought she'd be able to find a cheaper rent if she moved to the country, but she soon found out that she was really reliant on her car, which was expensive, and the rent wasn't that much cheaper anyway. She fell behind in her rent and she came to us when she was served a notice to vacate or an eviction notice for rent arrears. And this was the first time that she'd ever been in contact with a support agency, having managed her whole life to get by. Like many women her age, she had very little superannuation or savings, and so we were able to assist her to get into community housing where she's now thriving. And this story is really common. Older women who have spent their lives working, caring for children, caring for their elderly relatives, and then finding themselves all of a sudden in real trouble when they lose their income, their rent is increased, or they face another form of life shock. So what are we going to do about it? At HAG, we take an early intervention and prevention approach that delivers community education to people at risk of homelessness before they hit the point of crisis. There are a range of affordable housing options available. They're just not that easy to find. And so we encourage older women to come to us before they reach the crisis point so that we can give them the information they need to be able to help them plan for their future. This could include low-cost retirement housing or public and community housing. So the message that we want to get across to all women is that if you are a single woman, aged 55 years and older, on a fixed income or in a low-paid job and living in private rental, then you are at risk of homelessness. Our early intervention program has been developed over a number of years with culturally diverse communities, and we know it works. And so one of the things that we do at HAG is that once people are housed happily and safely, we encourage them to come back in to join the organisation as members so that they can then advocate for systemic change. They can use their experiences of homelessness to inform our media and our political advocacy and to raise awareness of the issues that face older women and then influence decision makers. So what we're asking of the Melbourne Women's Fund is to assist us to develop this into a formal peer education program. We've already identified 4 women, all former clients, who formed themselves into a peer education group almost organically with a bit of support from our early intervention worker. We've then provided 2 of them with training on public speaking and given them some training on how to give talks to groups of women. They've featured in different media stories, participated in research, and they've spoken on panels. We would like to formalise this into a program at HAG to develop our workshop material into structured training, to improve our volunteer management, and to scale up our community education so that we can not only engage more older women who have experienced homelessness in order to power them as individuals, but also to reach more older women in the community who may be at risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the blip earlier. I was dealing with a faulty pair of earphones. That was Executive Officer Fiona York, representing the Housing for the Aged Action Group, otherwise known as HAG. We now have Fiona patched in for your questions. Fiona, welcome. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, great. We have a question for you. HAG's project duration is February 2019 to January 22nd, so it has been running, oh gosh, I'm not seeing it, this question. Is the MWF grant for a new or special element only? The training of volunteer peer educators? Do they have a pool of volunteers already waiting to be trained for this work? What will happen if they don't get the MWF grant?
Okay, so did you say February 2019? Was that the question?
Yeah, the understanding is that your project duration is February 2019 to January 22nd.
Yeah.
Right. Is the MWF grant for a new or special element only the training of volunteer peer educators?
Yeah. So, like I said in the presentation earlier, the group formed itself organically, and we have already delivered some training to a group of 4 women who are peer educators for us at the moment. And what we realised by doing that process was that we really needed to put more resources into it and step back a little bit and put some time and effort into formalising the training and ensuring that we were doing it a lot better. So what the funding will do if we're successful is it help us to turn our workshop material into proper modules and to support the women and also recruit more women into the program. So the 4 women that have come to us, they came to us through our housing support program, and we housed them into long-term affordable housing. And we know there's a lot more women out there that would participate or could participate in this, and then we'd be able to reach a lot more women who are at risk. So it has been going for about 12 months or so. Obviously, since COVID, everything's been put on hold. So we're a little bit further behind. They haven't been having their regular meetings since March. But yes, there is a group of 4 women. We want to expand that to 15 women.
Terrific. I think we have time for maybe one more question. This is such a frightening topic for women. Which other organizations do you collaborate on this project with?
We worked with the Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria on a project that helped us reach culturally diverse older women. And so we're using that same model for our peer education program because we know it really works really, really well. And it resulted in about a 300% increase in referrals from culturally diverse people as a result of that targeted community ed. We also have a range of different homelessness and aged care services that we work with to ensure that women are supported once they become housed and also prior to them getting housing. So we're pretty well networked in Victoria, and we're also looking hopefully to expand interstate shortly. But at the moment, we've been going for about 35 years. So we're in a unique position of straddling both aged care and homelessness services. So we're fairly well networked.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Fiona.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll move along now. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
Our final Nurturing Grant presenter is Self-Help Addiction Resource Center, SHARC. Presenting for SHARC is Chief Executive Heather Picard and Women's House Support Volunteer Pamela Vale.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather and I'm the CEO at SHARC, and at SHARC we work with people who have drug and alcohol issues, And with me is Pamela, who is the volunteer worker at the Women's Recovery House. The way that we work with people at Shark is that we use our lived experience in our work. And for over 15 years, Shark ran a women-specific recovery house for older women in their recovery journey. And Pamela and I were actually both residents of the house over 20 years ago, and now we're in whole different kind of roles in our life, but still with Shark, which is quite extraordinary, I think. As happens, unfortunately, the Women's House lost its funding over 15 years ago, and what happened for women then who wanted to come into a recovery-focused housing program at Shark, they were obligated to work in live in and work their recovery in mixed housing, because that was the model that the department funded at the time. Pamela and I also were really concerned about this, because we felt that there were specific issues to women due to their life experiences where the kind of housing and support needed to be and was best done in a community of women. We talked about this a lot, didn't we? And tried to come to a solution around this, and thought, well, the very first thing that we need to do is get a house. So we did a lot of lobbying and a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And in early 2016, we got a wonderful 5-bedroom house. And we were very determined that that 5-bedroom house was going to be for older women in recovery from substance misuse issues. And the house took on its own life in early 2016. And Pamela's going to share with you a little bit about the house.
Thanks, Heather. So often the women come to us with a multitude of complex issues around access to their children, domestic violence, and other traumatic experiences. So, gradually by them being in the house, they're able to get a sense of community and be living their life the best they can. So once they come into the house, we sort of do an assessment and we get referrals for them to go into counselling or into domestic violence counselling, specialist healthcare, and they participate in a very structured program of activities which they can join into each day. I think that's about it.
Thanks, Pamela.
Thanks.
So Pamela's worked as a volunteer for us for the whole 4 years that we've been running the Women's House. I'd love to share a story with you today about Anouk, who was one of the longer term residents in our Women's Recovery House. And she actually was really hopeful to be with us today, wasn't she? But
yes.
Circumstances with the COVID shutdown have not allowed that. But she's asked that we share her story, and I hope that I can do it justice. But Anouk came to us with a long-term history of homelessness, and for her, she talks about couch surfing being the most familiar thing in her life through that period of time. She had a long-term history of alcohol dependence and experienced the distress and consequences of that kind of lifestyle. She'd lost access to her children, and she was no longer employable in the career that she truly loved. And Anouk spent over 6 months with us, and she really worked hard, didn't she, Pamela?
Absolutely.
She really applied herself to the goals that she set, and she worked incredibly well within the community of women. And one of the magics, I think we'd have to say, that happens in this kind of housing is that women come with distress and feeling disempowered, and through the actual community connection with other women, they get the opportunity to start feeling some empowerment through the support that they give others. I'd like to tell you the really exciting part of this story is that after this incredibly hard work by Anouk, she talks about being able to completely turn her life around. She now has access to her children. She has a work in a job that she truly loves and says that she's good at. You know, when you think back to Anouk as her way of describing herself was somebody who'd run for a long, long time and who'd completely lost her identity as a mother and as somebody who was a participating member of society through her work. Mm-hmm. And we see her now and my heart just opens. Her life has truly been completely transformed. So in closing, I'd like to thank the Melbourne Women's Fund and just say what a privilege it's been to be with so many worthy contenders here today. I'd also like to say that if we were successful in getting the grant, we'd be able to employ a worker who would support the women in their everyday recovery journeys. They would also set up protocols that are really essential for that house to be a credible, accredited entity in today's times. And it would enable us to establish a volunteer mentor training program with women who've been through the house. And that, of course, would help with our sustainability going forward. So, in general, on behalf of Pamela and myself and the current women in the house and the women yet to come, we'd like to say thank you, and we're incredibly hopeful that this valuable program for older women in recovery with so many complex issues may be able to continue into the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, we're back, and Heather is going to be answering questions, your questions regarding Shark. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
One of the questions that has come in is, how will you be evaluating this program?
Mm-hmm. We already do evaluate it. We use a quality of life tool to measure with the women when they first come into the program, and it's a very user-friendly kind of tool. We've modified it somewhat. It's about 16 pages, but we've modified it with the women so that it's user-friendly and actually captures what we want. And then we utilise, just before the women go back out into the community, we get them to fill the quality of life domain register again. So we're really looking at, has this program had impact in quality of life areas? And, you know, with volunteers running the program, we actually haven't had the advantage to crunch those numbers and analyse it, but we have had a commitment from a research organisation to support us with the ability to crunch those numbers and trend what we're seeing.
Terrific. Heather, can we ask you to just dip your camera down a little bit so we can see your full face? There you are. Okay. We have a question from Odette. What elements of the proposed project are not currently being offered to residents of the Shark House?
Could you ask that question again?
Yeah. What elements of the proposed project are not currently being offered to residents of the Shark House?
Thank you for that.
Sure.
It's currently being run by volunteers, and you saw Pamela in the presentation. The proposal would support a 2-day-a-week worker, which would enable more support and the ability to develop the processes and protocols required to get it accredited within our organisational framework. And it would enable us to provide a structured mentor program for women exiting the program. And the idea, like so many of the programs at Shark, is that those women that work as mentors, trained mentors, will actually assist us to run the program into the future.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Heather, for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Terrific. And that's it for the Nurturing Grant presentations. We are now going to take a 5-minute break for you to stretch your legs and do whatever else it is that you feel compelled to do right now. We'll see you back at 7:55. Oh, sorry, that's 6:55. To begin the signature grant presentations. See you then. Welcome back for the presentations for our 3 finalists for the $80,000 signature grant. First up is Birth for Humankind. Presenting are Programs Manager Natalie Kondich and Volunteer Doula Sarzana Muzaffari.
My name is Farzana. I'm a volunteer doula with Birth for Humankind. I work with women during their pregnancy, labor, and after they give birth to provide practical, social, and emotional support. I was worked and trained as a midwife in my country, in Afghanistan, before arriving in Australia. Soon after I arrived in Australia, I became pregnant. That was a difficult time for me. I had no family member in Australia. I was not familiar with healthcare system in Australia. Language barrier was another issue. My doula supported me a lot. She made a good connection between me and medical staff in the hospital. She made me feel supported and respected. She did a lot for me, especially during my labor. She was holding my hand and encouraging me to be strong. Emotionally, she supported me a lot. She was like my mom, my sister, and even more. Then after my birth, I decided to be a volunteer with Birth for Humankind because I thought this is another way that I can support women. Most of our clients are suffering from family violence and homelessness. I really wanted to support them because I had a good experience with my doula. I really want to be like a family member to them and support them.
The treatment and care that we receive during pregnancy significantly impacts our individual well-being. But it doesn't just stop there. Getting support right for mothers and babies from the start builds stronger families, connected communities, and impacts our whole society. It really is the start of the story. The women we support at Birth for Humankind have many stories. Unfortunately, the story of social isolation, experiencing homelessness or family violence during pregnancy or with a newborn baby is one we hear far too often. Family violence is the key cause of homelessness for women and their children in Australia. 1/4 of all women affected by family violence report that it occurred for the first time during pregnancy, and pregnancy is a time where violence can escalate. With the right support, pregnancy can also be a trigger for women to find the strength and resources to leave a violent relationship, protecting themselves and their children. My name's Natalie. I'm the Programs Manager at Birth for Humankind. We work with women who are pregnant or have recently given birth to provide practical, social and emotional support that complements their clinical maternity care. Nearly half the women we support are homeless or living in transitional or insecure accommodation. More than 75% of this group have experienced family violence or other forms of abuse. 1/3 are refugees or asylum seekers or have recently arrived in Australia, navigating unfamiliar systems, cultures and language. The care provided by the Victorian maternity system is excellent by global standards.
But women experiencing socio-economic disadvantage face many barriers to accessing the support they need. They often feel misunderstood or stigmatised by the treatment they receive. At worst, they report being further traumatised by their experiences in hospital. Ongoing support from a known, trusted, skilled support person is one of the most important interventions to improve maternal and child outcomes, health outcomes for these women. Yet, only 8% of women in Australia see the same maternity worker during their pregnancy. That's why Birth for Humankind matches clients with skilled birth support professionals, doulas, to focus on continuity of care and building trusted relationships so that women feel safe, seen and respected during their pregnancy, labour and when the baby is here. Without their doula, many of our clients would birth alone. Doula is a word that derives from Greek. It means service to a woman. Throughout history, women have taken this role of being pregnant during childbirth and the time after, holding space and providing support to women as they transition into parenthood. At Birth for Humankind, women know their doula will be there to attend appointments as a support person, to speak to her in her primary language or advocate for an interpreter, to build her confidence and preparedness for giving birth and becoming a new parent. As her due date draws near, she knows her doula will be on call 24 hours a day for when her labour begins. She'll be there by her side and for her alone until her baby arrives. You've heard how our doula shaped Fazana's story. With your help, this year, we can provide more than 750 hours of one-on-one doula support for 60 women in Melbourne who are pregnant and experiencing family violence and homelessness. With the grant, we'll provide specialist training to our 55 volunteer doulas so that they are equipped to support these women with the best tools possible. We will recruit 15 new doulas and induct them into our program to build our service capacity in the north and the west of Melbourne, our greatest areas of need. We'll also build partnerships with public hospitals in Melbourne that refer women into our services. We'll work together to better integrate the continuity of care model within the health system to increase our reach and build sustainability of the program now, next year, and into the future. We want to change things for the individual women we support, but we also want to address the systematic barriers that disadvantage some of the most vulnerable and marginalised women in our community. We believe all women everywhere have the basic human right to safe, respectful, woman-centred care. And together, we believe we can change those stories and change lives now and for future generations. Thank you.
We have Natalie from Birth for Humankind who's patched in. Hi, Natalie, to answer your questions. We have, the first question for you is, where is the service delivered to the women by the doulas, and to what extent do they work with physicians?
Sure. So the service is delivered in a number of different places. It's a combination of, it can be in the woman's home, it can be during hospital appointments or in hospital during birth, or potentially at a third location as well. You know, perhaps if the woman's more happy to meet, say, in a park or a cafe or something like that. So we really tailor that to what women need and what they want. And to the second part of that question, the doula is definitely very much a part of the woman's core support team. So the care that we provide it's not clinical, but we do try and collaborate with midwives, physicians, or whatever other members there are of that support team. So one of the ways that we might do that is by attending appointments with the woman. So that's on one hand to support the woman through her appointment, but also, I guess, to understand a little bit more about what the sort of big picture is for the pregnancy, and so that the doula can be there for that social and emotional support throughout.
Okay. Should you receive the grant, how would you intend to fund and sustain the program after the grant is finished?
So that's a big aim of our programs at the moment, and our sustainability has sort of a range of strands to it. One part of it is through the formation of partnerships with maternity hospitals, which is a component of this grant. So through working with the hospitals, we're looking to engage more closely with government and with hospitals to look at how doula support can be built in as part of the complementary care within the program. But we also have a number of other philanthropic, private donation, and other ways that we're looking to support our organisation. But really, we would really like to see it be embedded as part of something that the hospital can offer as well. That would be really great.
Great. Thanks very much, Natalie.
Thank you so much.
Our next signature finalist is Domestic Violence Victoria, also known as DVVIC. Presenting for DVVIC is Emma Morgan, Project Manager for Philanthropic Partnerships and Projects.
Nothing about us without us. We are all familiar with this iconic catch cry that came out of the disability advocacy movement of the 70s and 80s. At this same time, and in the same spirit of social justice and equality, feminist activists were coming together with victim survivors of family violence to create shelters and supports, establishing what we now know today as the Specialist Family Violence Services. In our daily work, specialist family violence practitioners work collaboratively with victim survivors to manage the risk posed to them by violent perpetrators, navigate a complex family violence system, advocate for their rights, and support them to restore safety in their lives. Family violence practitioners, the specialist family violence services they work for, and DVVIC, the peak body for specialist family violence services in Victoria, we are all ultimately accountable to victim survivors of family violence. Why are the voices of victim survivors important in our work? Because they keep us accountable within a system and society that colludes with men's violence against women, and because people are the experts of their own experience. My name is Emma Morgan. I'm the Project Manager for Philanthropic Partnerships and Projects at DVVIC. Thank you so much for this opportunity to tell you about our work and this critical new initiative we are leading with our sector. The establishment of a victim survivor advocacy body within the peak body for specialist family violence services in Victoria will enable victim survivor advocates to input into the design, delivery and evaluation of services and support victim survivor advocates to set industry standards for the engagement, remuneration and training of victim survivor advocacy in perpetuity. But first, I need to give you some context, and I have to warn you, this is a hard reminder of why we are here talking about this work today. On the 12th of February 2014, Luke Batty was murdered by his father in broad daylight on a cricket pitch in a Melbourne suburb. This came after years of family violence perpetrated against Luke's mother, Rosie Batty, and ultimately the system's failure to protect Rosie and Luke resulted in Luke's death. In the aftermath of this unthinkable tragedy, Rosie stood up as a powerful representative voice for all adults and children made victims or survivors of family violence. She changed the national conversation about family violence, and she led us to a point of no return. In the months following, DVVIC's then CEO, Fiona McCormack, accompanied Rosie to meet with Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews to demand change. Rosie's advocacy was instrumental in his decision to call a Royal Commission into family violence, marking a watershed moment that resulted in what is arguably a world-leading reform agenda aimed at ending family violence in the state. One of the key messages delivered by the Royal Commission was the need to embed the voices of victim survivors in every aspect of the family violence system. In response, the Victorian Government established the Victim Survivor Advisory Council, or VSAC, to work with the government on its family violence work. Rosie served as the chair of VSAC for its first term. Within the family violence sector, there has been incredible work done over the decades to embed the voices of victim survivors in how we do our work. However, this work has never been supported by an overarching framework, nor has it ever been adequately resourced. The time has come to embed the voices of victim survivors in the design, delivery, evaluation and governance of our family violence services in a more systemic, consistent and sustainable manner. We need the equivalent of VSAC for the community sector. Rosie endorses this initiative, and we are so fortunate to have her support and experience in forming this work. On the 27th of July, DVVIC and the University of Melbourne will launch the Family Violence Experts by Experience framework, designed to support specialist family violence services to embed victim survivor voices in the design, delivery and evaluation of their services. This work was co-designed by the University of Melbourne Weavers, a group of victim survivors who support the university's family violence research program. One of the key recommendations coming out of this action research project was the need for a victim survivor advocacy industry body in line with the intentions of the body DVVIC is now seeking to establish. So, how can the Melbourne Women's Fund support this next chapter of victim survivor advocacy in Victoria? The Signature Grant would fully fund us to work with a group of experienced victim survivor advocates to co-design the development of a business model and implementation plan for a victim survivor advisory body to work alongside the peak. We envisage this model will adopt a social enterprise approach in the form of an agency run for and by victim survivors. This will provide a centralised access point for DVVIC's member organisations, services from allied community sectors, corporate partners and government partners to hire victim survivor advocates to inform their work, where victim survivor advocates can come together to support one another and set industry standards for engagement and remuneration of their services, and where victim survivors with an interest in advocacy can receive training, support and employment. Why this model? Because the Experts by Experience framework has demonstrated that to engage with victim survivor advocacy authentically and sustainably, we need to find a new model for funding this work and enable organisations with limited resources to engage with victim survivor advocates effectively. Importantly, this work needs to be led by victim survivor advocates themselves. The rationale is that with this model, services can hire victim survivor advocates without needing to build the infrastructure and processes to develop from scratch victim survivor advocacy groups within their own organisations, which are resource intensive to establish and without secure funding streams cannot be sustained. With increased expectation from government that services will engage with victim survivor advocates in the design, delivery and evaluation of their services, organisations are motivated to do this work well. Why DVVIC? As the peak body, we are uniquely placed to support this work because of the mandate we have been given to lead the sector in the development of family violence policy and practice. We have influence and reach across the entire human service system in Victoria, as well as state and federal government departments, corporate stakeholders, the media and academic research bodies. Moreover, we are in the process of merging with the Domestic Violence Resource Centre, Victoria's only specialist family violence registered training organisation. Once established as a new entity within the next 12 months, we will bring together the strength, resources and expertise to become the largest organisation of its kind in Australia. At this critical juncture, we aim to model best practice in engaging with lived experience and embed this into the DNA of our new entity. Help us to ensure victim survivor advocacy sits at the heart of this pivotal part of the family violence system as we enter into a new chapter of our great purpose, ending family violence in Victoria. Thank you so much.
Now to answer the questions on behalf of DVVIC is Alison McDonald, active CEO. Welcome, Alison.
Thanks very much for having us.
The question we have for you is, can you explain how the social enterprise model will become sustainable?
So, look, centering diverse victim survivor voices within the family violence system was a key message that was delivered through Victoria's Royal Commission into Family Violence in 2016, and we think this project will really help us to realise that vision. I think it really has the potential to drive meaningful systemic change, but also providing personal benefit in the form of peer support and employment experience for women who have experienced family violence, rebuilding their lives after violence. So by building a business model into the family violence peak, using a social enterprise model, we really hope to establish a mechanism for victim survivor advocacy that has its own self-sustaining revenue base and isn't reliant exclusively on government funding. And because by virtue of the position that we hold in the family violence system, it would be of benefit to the whole of the specialist service system and the victim survivors that they work with. So we'd hire a project manager to lead the project and work in partnership with the University of Melbourne and their Weavers network to establish a project steering group that would be comprised of key stakeholders, at least half of whom we envisage would be women victim survivor advocates, and they would then co-design the business model. So we're hoping that this signature grant will enable us to develop a structured program of consultation and research to scope and assess the various different business and social enterprise models, revenue streams and business products. And then this would then be captured in a proposed business model that we can then implement, which would be co-designed by the project steering group.
Okay, all right. Let's see, we have another one. Is any other state already running this model? And if so, are you collaborating with them?
That's a very good question. I believe that this would be an Australian first, and I think what we've been able to do in Victoria post our significant Royal Commission is really to model to the rest of Australia what investment in whole-scale reform can do to turn the issue of family violence on its head in time. And I think that our Royal Commission has really emphasised, as I mentioned earlier, the need to centre victim survivor voices at the heart of everything that we do. I think there are great and fantastic models of consumer participation that we've looked at across the whole of the country. I don't think there's anything that's been done that is situated within a peak, like we're envisaging and using a social enterprise model. So what we're really hoping to do is establish something, and by virtue of who we are, we can model best practice in this way and be able to demonstrate to people how to do this in a really good way.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison.
Thank you.
Okay, all the best. Our final presentation for our signature grant is Margaret Tucker Hostel for Girls. Presenting for Margaret Tucker is Worrell Blow.
Good evening, my name is Worrell Blow and I'm the manager of Margaret Tucker Hostel. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. A welcome to country or acknowledgement of country is a way for both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people across Australia to honour, thank and show respect to the traditional custodians of the land. For Aboriginal people, the land is a part of our identity and of who we are and where we belong, and is important to our well-being on every level. Margaret Tucker Hostel was founded in 1983 and named after prominent Aboriginal activist, renowned author, actress and survivor of the stolen generation, Margaret Tucker. Auntie Margaret Tucker was removed from her family as a 12-year-old and placed in domestic service. Auntie Marge went on to accomplish many achievements in her life, including an MBE for her work and contributions to Aboriginal rights and the arts. Her biography, If Everyone Cared, is as appropriate today as it was when she wrote it in 1977. The Margaret Tucker Hostel is the only Aboriginal service for young women aged 15 to 18 years of age. Some of the young women we work with are young mothers with infants experiencing or are at risk of homelessness. We find in our service the main driver of homelessness for our young Aboriginal women is family violence. The Young, Smart and Deadly program is an extension of this respect, and it has been designed to offer healing and support by strengthening the young women's connectivity to country, culture and community, which is a key part to their well-being. An important part of the Young, Smart and Deadly program is the visiting female elders. This enables the sharing of their wisdom, insights, humour and stories of survival with the young Aboriginal women needing our service. It strengthens their cultural connections and the cultural safety of each young woman, giving them a stronger sense of their identity, an identity that has been injured from past intergenerational trauma, for example, the stolen generations. The hostel board, management and staff are very aware of this trauma and how it is still impacting our young Aboriginal women and children today. This was our key motivating factor for our application. Connecting with the female elders safely is not a given in the lives of these vulnerable young women accessing the hostel. It is an important relationship that helps build their sense of identity, well-being, and understanding of where they belong, which are all key factors in developing good mental health, resilience, and good physical and emotional well-being. When all these things are actively fostered and nurtured, the suicide ideation reduces, their mental health risks subside, the addictions are not as active, which are all key factors required in building respectful relationships. While Aboriginal women are 5 times more likely to experience family violence and be criminalised for poverty-related crimes, it must be noted that Aboriginal women and their services play a vital role in their holistic approach to family violence, where they work with the whole family or collaborate with other Aboriginal community services. We work towards closing the gap targets that all levels of government have been struggling to meet. Young, Smart and Deadly can make a difference to these targets and the lives of the young Aboriginal women who see the hostel as a part of where they belong and a part of their identity. The connection works on many levels and is multi-layered. The Visiting Female Elder program is complemented by the Living Skills program run by the hostel. This is where the young women are taught everyday living skills such as cooking, laundry, planning, a menu, and shopping. They learn how to cook their favourite recipes, and we also provide art and craft activities, which forms our culturally holistic, strengths-based approach in preparing them for independence. Some of the art and craft activities at the hostel include making some toiletry bags, hand and shoulder bags, bum bags, and masks. After making these items for themselves, some of the young women felt so proud of themselves and their achievement that they wanted to make them for their community members. These items were made for Mother's Day gifts to their mothers, grandmothers, and aunties. These items were also made for future residents coming into the hostel. Another project was an art installation called Her Loving Hands, entered into the Black Dot Art Gallery competition. In the art installation, the baseboard represents the land, the pegs represent the young Aboriginal women, the hands represent Animarge's loving hands, the sphere represents the hostel as the safe place that Animarge created for the young women, and the lights represent the hope we all have for the young women. And when it's lit up, the shadows that the light casts represent the past. We are proud of the many achievements of our current and former residents, including Ruby Red. Ruby recently entered her artwork to the Vogue Challenge as a featured cover for Vogue magazine. The challenge was for people of colour from Australia and New Zealand to develop an image of themselves for the front cover. Ruby proudly won position 5 out of 20. Ruby exemplifies the spirit of what we set out to achieve at the hostel by providing culturally holistic support. In closing, by partnering with us, we can journey together, realising the dream or vision for the present and future generation of young Aboriginal women and their children. By developing an intergenerational response with closing the gap on key health and wellbeing targets, we create opportunities for these young Aboriginal women and their children to realise more of their potential. We are also fulfilling the legacy of Aunty Margaret Tucker, who was able to realise her potential against the odds and make a significant contribution towards reconciliation. We at Margaret Tucker Hostel feel that this is such a great partnership opportunity. Thank you.
We now welcome Ruel, manager for Margaret Tucker, to answer your questions. Hi, Ruel. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. One question we have is, how many young, vulnerable Aboriginal women does Margaret Tucker Hostel generally care for?
Oh, okay. So I guess throughout the year we have around 25 to 35 young women come through our service every year.
Okay. And how will you evaluate the pilot?
The program will be evaluated by using, I guess, comparisons of numbers from the start of the program to the end to enable us to find out if the program is reaching the amount of young women that we intend it to reach. We will also participate, the young women will participate in surveys and questionnaires, I guess, about the program and what they're learning from it and how effective it has been to them in their learnings about culture and connecting with the elders within the community.
Okay, all right. If there aren't any more questions, we will continue on. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Okay, that's it for our presentations for our grant finalists. Now we turn the night over to our members to vote. If you haven't voted already, you should have your voting form handy and ready to use. If you have any questions about how to navigate your vote, we're about to put up a slide with the voting instructions. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes. So that'll be about 7:38-ish, 7:40. Okay, see you then. Welcome back, everyone. The voting is now closed. Before we move on to announce the winners, a word from our co-founders, Gillian Hund, OAM, and Patricia Burke, OAM.
Thanks, Christine.
Hi there.
Hi, Pat. As co-founders of Melbourne Women's Fund, Pat and I are thrilled to have been able to share this special online event with you all tonight. I hope that the awards will inspire our members, young members and guests to renew their memberships or join for our 7th year of giving. We really welcome you all. Because we have so many volunteers working to run our giving circle, every membership dollar donated is pooled with other membership donations so that together we are making an impact for women and families in our community through the organisations we are privileged to fund. That's the nature of collective giving, and it's only possible with your support. So my sincere thanks to everyone who's made this year's giving so successful. In actual fact, we have granted more than $700,000 since our launch in 2014. Isn't that a great figure? And our endowment account at the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation has already reached $158,000 from life memberships. Continuing our successful grant making depends on your ongoing involvement. So thank you again for making Melbourne Women's Fund a part of your philanthropy. And now over to you, Pat.
Thanks, Gillian. We give our very hearty thanks to the following dedicated volunteer leaders who have made tonight possible. Each of these superstars have helped us follow a steady course through the year, culminating with tonight, our biggest event of the year. Firstly, I'd like to thank membership co-chairs Sue Gourlay and Bianca Moore, Donna Burke, our chair, Melissa Chen, Sarah Priestley, marketing communications chair Kate Fueling, with Christine Darkus, members Kate Brooks, Sandra Castro, Gillian Hunt, and Ellen Matsu. Events chair Louise Potter with the task. Can you hear Gillian in the background? Is what's happening? The delay. Okay, I'll keep going. Sports committee: Christine Darkus, Simone Clancy, Amanda Thornton, Louise Potter, Sue Gourlay, and Sandra Castro. And to the grants committee chair, Amanda Thornton, deputy chairs Simone Clancy and Robin Trednick, members Bianca Butterworth, Diane Carey, Kate Eddy, Gillian Foss, Marie Kelly, Julie Owens, and Katie from Carey. We got a lot of people here, and it's very important to thank them. To our finance committee chair, Carol Mackey, and strategic planning chair, Kirsten Bartlett, Kathy Lacey, our secretary, who we needed for many years, and she's with us now. Special thanks to the two rocks at Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, Suzanne Doig, Lanya Catalano, with a great team there under Catherine Brown's leadership, support and guide our work. To Mary Latham, consultant, expert, center, powerhouse behind our signature grant winner, Women in Mentoring. Mary deserves deep gratitude for considerable commitments with each finalist, preparing them for this event tonight amidst these very unusual COVID-19 times. And finally, to our MC extraordinaire, Christine Darkus, who has steered us through this rather incredible year as our executive officer. In your words, Christine, to say it's been an extraordinary year is rather an understatement. I put it in rather. Thank you for your leadership, vision, your energy, and your delightful way. And now to the Nurturing Grant Award. Voting is closed, so we hand back over to you. See.
Thanks very much, Gillian and Pat. Okay, so I've been told that actually we can't patch in the winner until until we were finished with Jillian and Pat's talk. So I'm supposed to be patting in this section. Really, that means that I've poured myself a glass of wine. But I'm not quite sure what else I can really do to other than that. But also to say thank you so much to everybody for joining us this evening. And we've got the winner on the line. We've got the winner on the line. Great. Okay, so our first announcement is the winner of our $35,000 Nurturing Grant Award. To announce the winner is Grants Committee Deputy Simone Clancy.
Hi everyone. Sorry for my mask here. Who would have thought 12 months ago I'd be saying that to you tonight? So we're all ready to go. Oh, I need to put some headphones in. Drum roll, please. So the winner of the Melbourne Women's Fund Nurturing Grant for 2020 is Housing for the Age Action Group, or HARG. And accepting the award on behalf of HARG is Fiona York, Executive Officer. Hey, Fiona.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm shocked. I just wish we had some of our peer educators here that could enjoy this. They'll be thrilled. And on behalf of them and all of the older women that we'll be reaching out to over the next couple of years, thank you to everyone at the Melbourne Women's Fund and for all the support. We really appreciate it. It's great. Thank you so much.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Very worthy winners. Fantastic finalists, and congratulations to you once again, and to HARG. So normally I'd be passing you across a lovely framed certificate, but look, that'll be in the mail, and obviously the cheque will be in the mail as well. So
great.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Oh, I apologise. I have to invite our host, Christine Darkers, back to the chair, and I'll scoot off this way.
Yes? Whoever said that a digital event couldn't have all the interesting machinations of live entertainment? Congratulations to HARG. Hopefully there are cheers and clapping out there. I wish we could unmute you all to hear your reactions. Matt, can we actually do that? Could we unmute for their reactions?
I wish you could.
No, okay. Well, we'll just have to feel it in spirit. Pour it into the chat function. That's what we've got. And now for the big one. Okay, we're all patched in? Great. The winner of the $80,000 Signature Grant Award. Announcing the winner is our chair of the Grants Committee, Amanda Thornton.
Great. Thank you, Christine. I'm so not used to all this technology. I'm really, really pleased for all the finalists tonight, because they've all been fabulous, but I'm pleased to announce that the winner of the Signature Grant this year is Margaret Tucker Hostel for Girls, and Warrell's on the line at the moment. And Warrell, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for all your effort and all the effort that the finalists put in. You know how much of a journey you come on with Melbourne Women's Fund as a finalist, and we're really, really pleased for you. And on behalf of all the members who voted for you, thank you very much as well. And we're going to look forward to seeing your program unfold and see all the great work that you're going to be doing in the next 12 months or so. It's fantastic.
Thank you. This is amazing. I would just like to thank the Melbourne's Women Fund for the opportunity to put our submission in. And I too wish that I had everybody else who was involved in putting the grant together here with me. But yes, just a big thank you to everybody. It's amazing.
Terrific. Good on you. Thank you very much. And I think the next part of the proceedings is that we'll have to hand back to Christine now.
Yeah, that's right.
And I hope you're watching Worrell at home.
Yes.
When you get off the camera, that'd be great. Okay, I'll invite Christine back now. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Amanda. Congratulations again. I so wish we could hear your reactions. Hug, scream, clap, all of it. Okay, our finalists. In addition to working on the front line during this very difficult period, they've all worked hard and graciously with the technical challenges involved in participating in this event. So it's very important to us that none of them walk away empty-handed. Thanks to our members' generosity, each one of our runners-up will receive $3,000 in untied funding. Each of these organizations deserve to win, even though only 2 could. So we encourage you to keep them front of mind when you consider your own giving, be it financial or otherwise. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Bendigo Elwood Community Bank and the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, and also to our very special webinar provider, Matt Porter of Matt Porter Post. We're in the planning stages for our upcoming events, both educational and social. Keep an eye out for our emails and social media channels to learn what's coming. In the meantime, good night and stay well.